I'd like to for joining the webinar today. We're here to share with you how to save $5,325 per proposal using VisibleThread. This webinar is hosted by Deltek and is going to be presented in large part by our strategic partner, VisibleThread. I'm Kevin Plexico. I'm Vice President of Information Solutions here at Deltek, and I'll be our moderator for today's program. I run basically the research organization here at Deltek. So for those of you who use GovWin and the GovWin IQ product line, that's the set of products that I'm responsible for. I'm joined today by Fergal McGovern. He's Chief Executive Officer for VisibleThread. VisibleThread is a strategic partner of Deltek's, and we have partnered with them. Probably the most prominent place that you'd see this is if you're a user of GovWin IQ and have accessed any of the GovWin IQ federal or state and local opportunities. You will have noticed a link next to all of the procurement documents on our site where you can generate a compliance matrix on the fly. And this is basically a tool for you to very quickly extract the compliance requirements associated with RFPs and draft RFPs and other procurement documents in an automated fashion to very quickly find out what are the key requirements that you're going to have to respond to in generating that all too familiar compliance requirements and the compliance matrix for those of you who are kind of in the proposal world. So VisibleThread has a lot of extensive capabilities that I think are much more beneficial beyond just the compliance matrix. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn it over to Fergal to share with you a little bit about VisibleThread and how you can save $5,325. I want to cut you out $10 there, proposing VisibleThread. So Fergal, why don't I go ahead and turn it over to you?
Hey, thanks very much, Kevin, and thanks everybody for joining the webinar today and taking some time out of your busy day, no doubt. So Kevin has just outlined some context around our relationship with Deltek. We do power the starter compliance matrix generation capability within GovWin IQ, but today my primary focus is to share with you a little bit more about why some of our customers are saving substantial dollars with the solution. And I thought I might give you a broader brushstroke sense of our company and what we deliver and what value we deliver. So just to kind of reiterate, we are really interested in the solution around words. And you'll see a little kind of graphic on the top right of this screen saying choose your words wisely. We use this for quite a bit of our promotional literature. But it's an interesting one. If you do not communicate in a very clear way with the federal government, and furthermore, if you do not communicate in a consistent fashion and communicate your message consistently, you will potentially be non-compliant and you will potentially jeopardize your probability of win. So there's a very serious edge to this phrase, choose your words wisely. As Kevin mentioned, we are a strategic partner of Deltek, and we do a lot of really nice collaborative work together, so that's been working very well for us. So let me go through and I'll actually talk about what we'll cover today. I plan on covering out two core elements. You'll see item number 3 here, the cost-saving element. I will show you explicitly how that number was arrived at, $5,235. Give or take $10 either way, it doesn't really matter, I guess, so much. The core reason why our customer, who actually shared some of this information with us, saves and is saving on an ongoing basis that dollar amount, is down to two fundamental things. One, they are concerned that their proposal needs to be readable. And that's really important because if you do not get your message across in a clear and concise way, you run some risk. Two, they're using the solution to automate what was up to now quite an ad hoc approach, and it's ad hoc in most environments that we go into, and we're growing rapidly, and I guess a lot of the folks that we touch are manually checking whether or not things like Section M critical requirements are met in the response, whether or not your message and your win theme or win strategies are emphasized enough in the right areas. So the core rationale for this saving is all around being able to automate both of these capabilities. So I'll walk through in each capability in turn, and then at the end I'll share with you exactly that cost saving tally and where they came to that number from. So, how readable is your proposal? And there is a very serious note to this. you know, many of the folks that we work with are in extremely technical lines of business. If you're building for the military, if you're building for the DoD, whoever it might be, Navy, whatever it might be, you are probably sitting on a bunch of people or working and collaborating with SMEs, subject matter experts. And the question is, are they communicating? Are they providing content that's understandable? And there's a serious edge to that. If your content is too complex, will you accidentally be non-compliant? And of course, with all of this comes the question, which is overarching for everything we do, can you actually fix the problem efficiently? So can we measure it and fix it quickly? I thought I might start with giving you some real examples of what I mean by readability. This is an example. It's real. It's from an actual proposal, and it's from an actual exec summary. Now, I'm going to delight you by reading it aloud, and it's always a great trick to figure out whether your proposals are clear by reading it aloud. So here we go. TXE Network Technologies, the leader in global network data fusion, analysis, and visualization, is offering its off-the-shelf suite of global network analysis tools to the DHS, National Communication System, in response to solicitation, blah. Who the heck cares? What have I communicated? I've spent the first, how many words here? Wasting the reviewer's time. So fundamentally, what's interesting about this statement is that in fact, it's a long sentence. And that's why it's highlighted in blue, because our solution will flag all long sentences in excess of 25 words. And there's a very interesting correlation when you actually analyze a document and you highlight the proportion of long sentences, you get, in effect, an implicit readability metric. So we will show you in a moment where we can flag this type of rubbish, which frankly I will say unabridged rubbish, and will allow you the option to fix it sooner in the cycle. Here's the second one. This is real. This is a description of an offering, and I'm going to again read it because these guys are trying to blend sophisticated distributed computing with simple declarative configuration to combine an arbitrary number of proprietary and open source data elements into a single, cohesive intranet model. What in the name of Allah is this? I have no idea. I'm having to take a double and second read of this. And by the way, I have a computer science degree, so I'm just struggling to understand what are these guys trying to sell me. So basically, none of this type of boilerplate is doing us any favors. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how we can measure very quickly the levels of that type of boilerplate and the levels of that type of complexity. Why? We're not trying to add layers to your process. We're trying to help you win more. We're trying to do it in a more efficient way. So we can measure this readability, and we can do it very, very quickly. And again, this is why this customer that I talk about that saves $5,000 per proposal is doing exactly that. They're uploading, and in this example, you can see there's 4 different documents, each a version of a task order, V13 to vFinal on the left-hand side. And we're seeing statistics, and these are macro-level statistics. They're overall statistics for each version of that document. On the far right-hand side, the long sentence proportion in the very first version, and this is going into, for those of you who are familiar with color team review processes, this was going into a red team, color team review, 18.7% long sentences. And fortunately, after a couple of working days, they got it down to a very respectable and very nice 6.9%, while increasing the word count. So what you find is actually the clarity improves, and the ability to communicate more relevant content also improves. So long sentences is one simple measure that will give you very profound insights into your proposals and how you're doing. Of course, you can also upload different sections of an overall proposal. So for instance, many of our customers will have different sections allocated to different writers or different SMEs. And the folder can contain all the various sections so that you can see which sections are most in need of help. So that kind of thing can be very, very efficient to help get a much more useful and clearer document. So that's a good result. This is when we want to go into the specific detail of a given document. So the previous screen showed us almost the kind of side-by-side view of documents as they relate to each other. This one is a more detailed view. It's a single report, and what you see on the top are overall statistics for that one document. What you see here underneath the arrow titled "This is the doc content" is the actual content, and this would include statements similar to the ones that we saw a moment ago that were either trite or extremely confusing and ambiguous. And if you've got those types of statements, frankly, you either need to say, get rid of them, reduce your word count, or re-articulate them in active voice in more clear-cut ways, such that the reviewer, who is also reviewing you alongside 15 letter docs, can get a much more positive impression. So it's a lot about not making the reviewer do work, because ultimately everybody is motivated by that selfish motivation of getting something the easiest way possible. So reviewers in the federal government are not blessed with necessarily PhDs or ability to kind of reread your doc multiple times. They will move on quickly, and they will not potentially mark you as compliant as a result of complex and non-communicative text. How do you fix it? This is tricky stuff. No tooling on the planet, in my opinion, can fix automatically your writing. All we can do in tooling land is help flag issues. We can highlight and surface problems. And we can look through 200,000 words, and we can say, well, that particular document or that section of a document has problems. But you need to fix it. So here we start off with something that's been reported. The purpose of this software quality control plan. So this is a software quality control plan. This is text coming out of the report similar to what I showed you a moment ago. So the purpose of this is to define the procedures and methodologies that will be employed by TXE Network Technologies to assure timely deliveries of TXE's applications. I've already glossed over, I'm already semi-falling asleep at this point. So the message is going right over my head as a reviewer, and I'm just like, well, they're making me read this thing again. So how can we fix this? So we in VisibleThread never suggest that tooling will fix it. A good editor will fix it, but the issue is that what proposal manager has time to do this stuff? You typically find yourself in red team, fixing grammar, because that's what everybody tends to focus on, as opposed to more substantive structural issues like what we're seeing here. But here's a first crack at fixing this. I'm changing the structure, and I'm changing the text to make it non-passive. Passive voice, by the way, for those who may not be aware, is where the subject precedes the verb. So for instance, in that first statement, defining procedures and methodologies that will be employed in maroon, that's passive. Procedures and methodologies are the subject and the verb is employed. So I change it and I say this software quality control plan defines how we will meet these quality standards, and I outline specifically so that I know my reviewer can easily pick those up with a scan. In other words, I'm now bringing in the real credible metrics, the evidence that my claim is valid. We will meet or we will deliver applications to agency on a timely basis. I still have an issue with that timely. I have no idea what the SLA is. And by the way, timely is also part of a waffle dictionary that we frequently use with our customers. It doesn't have a defined time span. Is it 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 years? What is timely? So rather than that, I would actually edit it out again, and I would make it much tighter. I would say, meets these quality standards, X, Y, Z. Your agency will benefit by. So outlining the benefits, a benefit-driven sales positioning is what we're about. So if you look at the top version versus the bottom version, what you see is a few interesting points. Whilst the bottom version is wrapping to new lines, there's still 4 lines, but there's a lesser word count. The bottom version is easier to digest from a visual standpoint. There's directed language. The agency clearly can scan this very quickly and pick up the key benefits. And the measures are important. We're bringing out measures. So oftentimes when we say re-articulate things as lists, people will say, well, that's going to blow up my word count, and all of a sudden we're blowing that. It says to me a different problem. It says that they've still got a lot of waffle text in there, and they need to focus on actually tightening up most of that. So that's the fix, and the tooling will not magically offer you up a wonderful fix. It will suggest that you need to lower your sentence, your long sentence ratio. It will show you where the passive voice exists. It will flag things like nominalizations and hidden verbs, which I won't go into right now for the risk of distracting us. But bottom line, it's trying to flag earlier and at a much earlier point in your cycle potential issues. And it's also looking at boilerplate text. So we often get this question, what is a good level of readability? And it's a very interesting question, because the beauty about statistics like this is that they are objective. You can't argue when I tell you that that document has got 16% long sentences or 19% long sentence. There's no real argument with that particular statistic. It is factual. It is what it is. Of course, what you determine to be good or bad in terms of the statistics is a judgment that you need to make. This is a sample set of benchmarks used by one of our customers. You can see they have a marginal level of, for instance, passive voice at 11 to 15, long sentence 16 to 20%. So they make a determination and they wire this into their color team review process. And what they do then is that they take these metrics and they grade the documents based on these, and they do not proceed past that gate until they get below certain levels. So this, in fact, is what they and most of our customers do to apply this in their process. You run readability checks, and you're using it typically to support color team review phases. You're analyzing proposal write-ups and sections. You're analyzing not just one master document, because of course at early draft stage you have multiple documents that may collectively become one document. After each scan, your volume leads, your proposal managers are looking at the results. They're making a determination, which is a human determination as to where our focus needs to be applied. The beauty about this is that we're no longer locked into formalized red, pink, and earlier purple team review sessions. You're just uploading the document on an immediate basis. So as soon as that document is in draft form, you can start to make insightful comments at that point. And that's nice because it frees up a lot of time and it unblocks a lot of the heavy bottlenecks that start to gather up towards the back end of your cycle. If you're trying to crank a proposal, a lightweight task order in 2 to 4 weeks, you don't have a whole lot of time to navel gaze. So the beauty about this is that you can quickly analyze in a couple of minutes, you can quickly determine, and you can share the results with the authors and flag the issues before you even get anywhere near formalized kind of pink or red team phase reviews. The authors typically edit and fix the documents, re-upload those for reanalysis, and basically you just rinse and repeat. The beauty is you can track the trend in VisibleThread, so you can see improvement or disimprovement, so you can measure and reward people as you need. And that typically is very important, particularly as you manage your contractors who are coming in on a contract basis. This now starts to give you insights as to how truly productive they are in terms of the content they're developing. It's here as a helper to editors and writers. It's not here as a replacement, and that's the key point. It also, in many of our customers, helps mitigate the need to even hire a writer, because many customers don't have that luxury. What docs would you measure? Well, in the case of many of our customers, they're looking at exec summaries routinely. They're looking at management tech volumes. The cost volume, of course not numbers, you're not interested in that, but the narrative around that. The risk enclosures and so forth, as well as possibly additional documents such as the software development plan, quality control plan, etc. Again, many of you on this call may not be in the software business, but the equivalent plans exist and annexes exist in your particular areas. And you'll have a good sense for what your customers are sensitive towards. Okay, that's readability. The second core element for why our customers are saving the types of dollars we talked about is the ability to validate quickly whether or not you're meeting certain Section M requirements and whether or not the win themes and win strategies, or put a different way, differentiation is emphasized consistently. So we're interested in seeing how we can help our customers do that as well. And fortunately, I have to tell you, the good news is that they're saving huge time, because right now, this is the approach. So I'm going to tell you what exists. This is the state of the art as we see it out there. This is not tooling. This is just simply the way it is. The top section or statement is an extract from an RFP. It's an extract from a Section M, so it's a requirement. And it reads, the government will evaluate for understanding, completeness, and adequacy the offerer's proposal alternatives analysis, and never mind that it's grammatically a little bit iffy, but there we go, and process for the creation and implementation of an archive data policy. Very typical statement that you'll typically see in there. So I've called out in dark text some of the key words that I would tend to hone in on, archive data policy, for instance. And what you do today is you take a statement like what's appearing on the top, you whack it into a compliance matrix, you might split it out into a number of different statements, you put together a column in that compliance matrix, you say which part of your proposal is addressing that need, and off you go, and you manage all that manually. And then you check compliance later on by doing search. Find the particular point. So in this case, you manually search for things like archive data policy. You use MS Word find, and it becomes quickly your best friend. And that's not that efficient an approach. And the reason it isn't is because it's just massively manual. It's somewhat ad hoc, so therefore it's not systematic, and there might be holes in the approach because it is, of course, us as human beings. Wouldn't it be nice if we could save all those hours and make it a more systematic point-and-shoot affair and do something that technology is very good at doing, which is repetitive, laborious drudge work? So that's what we will, in fact, do. Now, I should mention before I move off of that, the capability that Kevin mentioned and that we partner with Deltek to offer as part of GovIQ will quickly generate you a basic starter compliance matrix via GovIQ, and we also provide that in our core product. But what we're really interested in doing is cross-referencing the response with the issuing doc and cross-cutting using these terms and phrases. So I'm going to ask myself, are there gaps between the solicitation and proposal docs? And I'm showing you a screen. On the left of this screen, I've got a set of key terms and key phrases. You'll notice that the area is flagged in purple. And the first section begins, Section M, critical items. The first word is metrics, the second one is user training, the third is archive data policy. Recall a moment ago we saw a statement, a compliance requirement that we must provide archive data policy, and we must provide a mechanism to support that and so forth. User account support. So these are part of a dictionary. We call this dictionary a concept list. And what I'm then doing is looking at each document in this folder. So VisibleThread has folders, and you upload documents into the folders, and those documents can be both solicitation documents, or a number of them, as well as your various extracts for the ultimate proposal. So you could often see a situation where you have 10, 15, 20 docs in a folder. Maybe 8 of those docs are related to the solicitation, and maybe the balance of 12 are related to various sections of the response. In this case, each column on the right is showing a document. So you see the orange rectangle. And what I can tell you immediately is that archive data policy, whilst it was mentioned in the first column, which is one of the solicitation docs, my fourth column, which is my response, is missing that. So I've got a compliance issue. I've got a serious issue going on here. And whether it happened by accident or whether it happened by virtue of just us not being able to control the response and make sure all of this stuff was in there, or we didn't have time, who knows? But that is going to effectively lose us the proposal or potentially put it in jeopardy. So this is a macro view. It's cross-cutting a bunch of docs, and this macro level view is very important as part of how you can validate whether you are aligned with the issuing side. Let me go into more detail here. The next question is, can we validate whether or not a specific section in a given document is addressing a key point? So same set of Section M keywords, same set of kind of themes, if you will, on the left-hand side, things like user training, metrics, archive data policy. The only difference now is that I'm focused on one and only one document. So you see on the right sections of that document. So I've selected that document in VisibleThread. I'm now seeing that, in fact, we don't have archive data policy mentioned in the document, and that we can tell very quickly because it shows gray text and no number to the right of that. And we also don't have user account support. So basically, we're missing 2 core elements that we deemed important from the point of view of a good, compliant, and complete and compelling response. I can also tell you that there's a second issue here. And this is where you tease into more of the detail. User training was indeed mentioned in the response. And we know that user training is quite important from the point of view of the customer. However, we can tell from the right-hand side that it did not appear until very late in the document. So I was hopeful that it would appear earlier in the document, possibly the exact summary or product description, or somewhere earlier so that we would emphasize that, because we know it's a kind of a hot button of the customer. And yet it was way down in the depths of the document, way under product description, where it was first mentioned. And you can see on the very bottom section of this screen, we have a grid which shows the exact text extract, and it reads, user training will be provided in accordance with the provisions, blah, 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 blah. So what you see here is a second, more subtle issue at play. The first issue was pretty obvious. We didn't mention archive data policy at all. Point number one, let's log that, let's note it, and VisibleThread has the ability to collaborate and note items like that. The second one was that we did not have completeness and a compliant response, or at least something that would affect our perception of being compliant, which is this user training thing. So how do you apply this in your process? Well, it's very similar to the readability approach. You would run what we call a concept list check. A concept list is a set of keywords and phrases that you can define. There are a number of somewhat clever ways in the tool that allows you to arrive and get a sense for what concepts might be emphasized in the customer side. We have an area that I'm not showing you today, which depends on natural language analysis, that tots up the number of nouns and frequency of nouns in the issuing docs, or indeed any docs, and you can get a very strong hint as to what the emphasis is in terms of the issuing side. We then, after we run these scans, these concept list scans, we spot gaps. We spot the types of gaps that I've just flagged. And again, this is exactly what our customers are doing. And the customer that's totting up the $5,000 is doing exactly that. Sharing results, flagging problems, flagging typically gaps, and editing and fixing those problems sooner and faster. So it's the same idea. And how many docs you want to apply this is largely dependent on the strategic nature of the proposal. If you're dealing with a very quick turn task order, or if you're dealing with an RFI or a very lightweight item, you may be only scanning one doc. You may be using a relatively repetitive dictionary. If you're dealing with a very strategic proposal, you're dealing with a $100 million proposal or north of that, you probably want to spend some time customizing your concept dictionaries. And there's ways of very quickly arriving at custom concept dictionaries within VisibleThread. Should you always go after software development plans with this stuff? That's a judgment call. Should you always go after the maintainability plan or any of the program plans? They are judgment calls. But again, we would also recommend using a dictionary check which emphasizes bad language or risky language against those types of documents, which is something I won't show you today in the interest of time, but basically that would flag risk issues over non-SLAs being flagged in your program docs, which might get your contract into trouble. So the cost savings. We promised you we'd share why 5,235, and I'd like to show you how you can arrive at the same results. This is a somewhat wordy slide, but it is an extract of the report for why this customer saved this amount of hours, and it's extremely real. So what they say in the very top portion of this slide is it would have taken us 87 hours to manually analyze the readability, the consistency, quality and compliance, the exact summary, all of the various bits and pieces that go into create a good proposal. They did an analysis internally which analyzed the total word count and what the rate of reading and review would be per hour. And they looked at the net savings, which came to 71 hours instead of the 87 hours. And they looked at what time they were spending in VisibleThread, and that was 16 hours, to help create all of the reports and make the reports available to various editors and authors. So in this case, you see a breakdown of that 16 hours. 9 hours to create 6 specific concept lists. So they had 6 specific lists. Sometimes these lists can be focused on certain verticals, certain sector areas, certain customers. You can share lists across multiple proposals. 2.5 hours to break up the consolidated proposal volume, 53 individual section documents, and 4.5 hours And this is a very profound statistic, 4.5 hours to analyze 53 documents. Now, I don't know about you, but if you gave me 53 documents, regardless of the size, it would take me a long time to go through those documents. I don't think I would get anywhere near 4.5 hours, but you see the types of reasons why this type of stuff, particularly analysis of readability and something that can be automated like dictionary checks for core consistent themes and differentiation, can be extremely efficient in this context. So when you're dealing with large volume, that's really important. And in summary, this is the real takeaway. 87 hours versus 16 hours. Using a loaded hourly rate of $75, 71 hours gives you 5,325. Give or take a tenner either way. So that's where the number comes from, and I hope you see my story today is credible. I hope you see how you can use this software to help augment what you're currently doing, not to rule your world, but to simply eliminate a lot of tedious cycles that really are in nobody's interest to have to do. So automation is very good. We are not suggesting we'll fix the documents. We are suggesting simply that we'll flag the issues very quickly so that you can take quicker actions and smarter decisions earlier. And with that, I might hand back to Kevin. And we promised you we'd leave you go a little earlier today, so I hope it's been a useful presentation. Back to you, Kevin.
I want to just thank everybody for joining. And if you want to learn more about VisibleThread or talk to Fergal about licensing the tool, I'd encourage you to email them at info@visiblethread.com or contact them directly. And we thank you very much for your time and attention today.